Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain.
Welcome to Passionate World Talk Radio. Educate, enlighten, entertain. I'm Shannon Zeeman, and thank you for joining us on the most important 15 minutes of your day, where we share expert information on safety and preparedness that you can use in your everyday life. In January, Troy and I reviewed how to hide in an active shooter event. Today, we're going to explain the third and final part of the run, hide, fight mantra, which is fight. When you can't run or hide, your last resort is to fight because your life is in imminent danger. We know this isn't easy to think about and even harder to execute. And that's why Troy and I feel it's really an important topic to discuss. And we want to help you learn how to make a plan and how to execute that plan. So thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
So our bodies can take a lot of damage and trauma before giving up. And this concept is extremely important for you to know and believe in. If you believe that in an injury, you can, injury would stop you, or you believe that because an attacker has a weapon that you can't fight, then you're going to give up really easy. And that is just what the shooter wants you to do. So Troy has been on thousands of incidents with victims and with trauma and major injuries. And we saw and heard stories of victims in the Las Vegas mass shooting overcoming their major injuries from trampling, gunshot wounds, and deep gashes to their limbs. In these cases, those victims were able to fight through their injuries and run or hide until medical treatment arrived. You should never give up. This is so important. You should never give up. Your body will never give up on you. You only have to decide to give up for it to stop. So Troy, when we were at Route 91 at the mass shooting, Troy was shot in his leg. So why don't you tell them a little bit about that?
So about halfway through, the shooting was about 10-minute shooting. And about 5 minutes into it, I was shot in my right leg in the upper thigh. And what happened with that was the bullet went into my leg and broke up. And as it's still in there now, but I was able to still run, help people, hide, give medical treatment to people. And really, I didn't even receive medical treatment until 5 hours later. So what it was is there's a difference between me doing that and the normal citizen. And that is that I've been trained over and over and over again about never giving up on a wound or an injury. There are only a few places in your body that you could be hurt, and that would cause you to be incapacitated. And if those are not the areas where you get that injury, then you can just keep moving on and go as long as you want. The adrenaline in your body makes you strong. Sometimes people don't feel the pain, and just that understanding that they have to survive is very important. Some people can do it without training, and other people can't do it even with training. So it's a very important thing that we're talking about today, which is you can't give up on your body. Understand that your body is really, really resilient, and you really need to just keep your mind that you are going to survive.
We had so many amazing stories of people at Route 91 that were injured in one way or another. One of the stories is a young lady who, at the very beginning of the shooting, was shot in three different areas on her body. And she was still able to hop a small fence. She was able to scale a 10-foot chain link fence and run all the way to one of the major hotels. So that's just one example of not letting yourself stop, right? Keeping your body going, or helping other people, or whatever you need to do. Just don't give up on yourself. That's our main point on that one. What can we do if we're faced with like an imminent threat and no escape?
So if you're inside of a building and the actual shooter is coming towards you, is around the corner, coming down a hallway, and you're actually in a room, The things that you can do is if there's more than just you in the room, then you want to devise a plan. If the shooter comes in, what are we going to do and who's going to do what? One of the main advantages we have is when you're out of sight of somebody, for them to actually cause harm to you, they have to reacquire you, whether it's in their gun sights or if it's somebody trying to punch you, they still have to reacquire you. And there's a distance and time that your brain has to go through. So that perception reaction is actually in our advantage when we're out of sight and they're coming towards us. So you want to be able to use that perception reaction to give yourself that little bit of advantage. The other thing is, if there's multiple people in there, then what you want to do is that plan, you want to tell everybody, okay, what we're going to do is, let's make an example. I'm going to run at the person and I'm going to knock them down. And you could use a weapon, you can use any blunt object, you could just tackle them. But what the other people want to do is immediately run right at that person and grab both arms and legs. And if you know human beings like we all are, if I can't use my arms and my legs, I can't fight you anymore. And all you have to do is one person on each arm, one person on each leg, and that renders the shooter incapacitated, and you can sit on him for 5 hours until the police get there if you want, or you could possibly render him incapacitated and knock him out or something like that and then run. So there's all different things you could do at that moment, but you have full control of the shooter if everybody has an arm and everybody has a leg.
And we know that this is a really scary thought, right? And most of us civilians have never really been trained on let alone charging person as someone, taking control of them. But there are a lot of examples of people that just hid or stayed still, and a lot of violence was caused to them. And there are a lot of stories out there that people that chose to fight back and change that element.
Yeah, yes. And the fighting element is huge because the shooters just don't realize that you're going to attack them. They believe they have all the advantage and you're just going to be sitting there giving up and letting them do any type of violence towards you. In France, years ago, we had a team of military guys from the United States. They were on a train and they saw a terrorist come into the train car, and he had weapons, knives, and guns. And the three of them decided, we're not going to sit here and let him hurt everybody. What we're going to do is we're going to rush him and incapacitate him. And they were able to do that, even though they got their injuries. They were still supposed to, or still could, fight through their injuries that they received, but also incapacitate the shooter so that no one else got hurt. And that's there's hundreds of those types of stories.
Right. One of the latest high school shootings was in 2019 at the STEM high school in Colorado. And there were students that decided to charge the shooter. Unfortunately, one young man lost his life, but the rest of them were able to get control of the shooter. And they don't even know how many lives they saved. So it is a very scary situation. None of us ever want to be in this situation. It is the last resource, but we do have to have a plan. And that's why we're talking about this today. So what if you're in a room and the shooter is about to enter?
Yeah. So one of the things that we talked about just a couple of minutes ago was that perception reaction. So if you hide around the corner and wait for them to enter, and we've all done this. We've all done this as kids. We've all done this as adults, playing tricks on people. That perception reaction, we have to understand that the shooter has the same perception reaction. So if you are going to hide around the corner, scare your friend, you're doing the same thing to the shooter. And what it does is it allows you to have that advantage over them so that you could actually attack first. And hopefully, if there's other people in the room or you're by yourself, you can get the person down on the ground, get the shooter down on the ground, hit them with something over the head, and then run. And then they still have to reacquire you. Now they have to go after you. And that is even hard for somebody to do. So use that perception reaction as that advantage. And then obviously, like we said before, you want to devise those plans. And as a group, especially schools do this to their kids all the time. If if a bad guy or a bad girl is going to come into the room, they've already taught their kids that we're throwing books at them, we're throwing pencil, anything you can throw at them, you're throwing at them. So you're doing the same thing. That distraction can help control that situation.
Right. You got to think about how hard it is to, if you're at the shooting range and you're lined up to, shoot your gun and you're trying to look through the sights and you're holding your arm. I mean, it takes me forever to get one shot off. And, that's without chaos running around. That's without me running anywhere. That's without people throwing things out. Everybody has a huge water bottle. I mean, throwing those at people are going to hurt anyway. So those are all great options to do. So can people really have this fight, have it in them to fight the shooter?
Well, this is the hardest thing in a person's life. When we're kids, we're fighting. Kids get in fights, whether you're a female or a male, you are going to get in a fight somehow with your siblings or with a friend or something like that. And it's physical. And it's one of those things that as we become adults, we are constantly trying to avoid that. Right. There's only a few percentage of people in the world that like to fight, and those people may be trying to get in conflicts with people. But really, the people who are the ones that are learning and training to be fighters are professional fighters, law enforcement, and military. And these guys are constantly training. So when it comes to that fight instinct, even we don't want to be involved in that. We have been trained to do it. So we can see our advantages and we can see what is going to happen. We've also been hit a bunch of times, 1,000 times. We've all been hit in the face. We've all been hit in the neck.
Police officers, that's what he's talking about.
Yes. And the reality is that if you haven't been hit in the face every now and then, you're going to feel like, if I get hit in the face, that's scary. It's going to hurt. And I don't want to do that. Yes. And so those are things that you have to understand when you're actually fighting. And most people don't understand that. They're actually afraid to get hit, which is understandable. But in this case, I would rather get hit than just sit there and let that person do something violent towards me.
Right. And I would say, you never know if you're going to have the fight or flight in you until you're in that situation. So when we were in Las Vegas at the mass shooting, I surprisingly had the fight instinct in me. And not only were we trying to help people get out or anything, but at one point I believed that the shooter was in the venue and coming towards us. And it was in my head. I was like, you have got to be, you're kidding me. I am not going down like this. And I truly felt inside, whether I would have done it or not, if I was faced with it, I don't know. But I felt down deep inside, if I saw that shooter, I was going to try and give some kind of conflict. I didn't know what it would be, but that was inside me. And again, I can't tell you if I 100% would do it, because thank God I didn't have to be faced with it. But that, and we heard a lot of stories about people that have done this in shootings. So the next question is fight a component, that fighting component, is it only about being physical and fighting with the shooter?
No. So what we learned in Las Vegas is that fighting is not just incapacitating the shooter. It's actually, there's an emotional part of it. And you have to be able to fight through that emotion and break yourself away so that you can make proper decisions. Just like the run and the hide part, we're wanting to make proper decision. If you get too emotionally involved, whether it's fear or fear of somebody else, then you can maybe miss an opportunity to escape out of there. And then, of course, just like me and several hundreds of people in Las Vegas, and all over the world with all these things, people get injured, and sometimes they're really bad injuries. You have to fight through that injury. You have to understand that you may have to give yourself medical treatment for 30 seconds and then still go. And the fighting is just not taking the gun away from a bad guy and rescuing everybody.
Right. And just know that we're saying, it doesn't, again, fight doesn't mean that you have to attack the shooter and take them down. Fighting could be that you're throwing things at them to get their sights off of you, so then you can run or you can barricade. So fighting is a large component, but it is your last resort out of run, hide, fight. So that's the mantra that we want you to remember and work on. Troy talked a lot about perception and reaction. He kind of added that in today. The next time he joins me, we're going to dive deeper into perception and reaction, explain to you the things that can happen to your body during stressful situations and how to help yourself or people around you overcome those. So it's a great topic that we use in our talks. And then also you can pick up our book, Active Shooter, the most important 4 minutes of your life. And you can read a little bit more about our story, and we break down Run, Hide, Fight even more. So thank you for joining me again.
Yes, thank you for having me on.
It's fun to have him next to me. I love it. So next week, Sergeant Clayton Cranford joins me to share practical steps to keep your children safe online, especially during this COVID time. He's got some wonderful insight. I'm really excited about that. So thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You've just been listening to the most important 15 minutes of your day with me, Shannon Zeeman, and you can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, with knowledge, you have the power.
Thank you for listening to Passionate World Talk Radio. You can listen to this program all over again by going over to https://passionateworldtalkradio.com. You can also hear it on Spotify, Spreaker, Amazon Alexa, AMFM247.com every Tuesday evening between 8 and 9 p.m. YouTube, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, and all the other podcast directories one can find on the internet.